Wake up with the news and information you can trust. Starting your day the right way with the Andy Griffin Show. This is News Radio 890, 92.5 KDXU.
Good morning to you, 9:09 on KDXU. Oh, you were actually starting a minute or so late. But anyway, we're here. I'm Andy Griffin. Thanks for tuning in to the program. I've got a guest on the phone line with me, Felecia Maxwell-Barrett. Hi, Felecia. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate it. You are with an organization that I'm going to be honest, I had never heard of until Don Willie gave me a call and said, hey, I want to hook you up with Felecia and we can talk a little bit about something called Utah Global Diplomacy. Tell me what that is.
Yeah, and what you just said actually is not a surprise because even though we've been around for 60 years, we got started in 1967, very few people know who we are and what we do. But the really interesting thing is that we're the leading nonprofit in the state of Utah that connects Utah to the world and the world to our great state.
Okay.
So what that looks like is we work with the U.S. State Department to host international delegates. It could be business owners, it could be government officials, nonprofit leaders, faith leaders, and they come to Utah on a themed program. And what we do is we're the host organization that sets up all of the professional meetings. So cool people in Utah who are doing similar work as them. And then their cultural activities as well, because we definitely want to highlight Utah as this innovative, economical, cultural hub that a lot of people around the world don't know about.
The first thing that popped into my head as you were talking about this was the Olympics. Of course, we had the Olympics here before. It's coming back again. I'm guessing that the Olympics probably helped a lot in helping your organization do its job because, if you go to, say, Zurich and you ask them about Utah, most people on the street are going to be like, I think they had the Olympics. That's about all I know.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to date myself here, but I remember with the first Olympics, the big selling point was if we host them, then people around the world are going to be able to point out Utah on a map.
Yeah, it's true.
And right. And it is really interesting that when we bring in all of these people, and it's about 400 of these global leaders, it's about 125 different countries a year. The interesting thing is they say, I never thought about coming to Utah when I think about the United States. But then they go back and they end up telling about 40 more people about their experience here.
Oh, wow.
And so when we think about how important it is to hold business meetings and to have conversations about what is going on, it's also a really great tool to highlight Utah and get us on the map. Now, one of the things that is, in my opinion, really interesting, and I'm a data nerd for sure. I really like evidence of the work that we do and the impact that we make, is that we look at what is the long-term impact of the programs that we host. We as a nonprofit have a responsibility to show how we're using the money that is given to us as an organization. And so while we track the global impact of the programs that we do, we also track the local impact. So what does it mean to the people of Utah when we bring in all of these people from around the world and we say, okay, what we want you to do is just shake hands, sit down together and start exploring how do you make the world a better place with the work that you're doing in both of your communities. And what we have found through our study is that, Utah gets this really great appreciation for different cultures, for different languages, for different ideas around the world. It makes us more conscious about cultural differences and value systems. And I mean, it sort of just automatically speaks to who we are as a Utah people anyway, just because so many people here they go on missions, or they do study abroad programs, or they're in businesses that are already globally connected. But it just really fosters this way of thinking about the world as a larger space beyond our state borders. And so it really does prepare a community of volunteers to say, yes, we do want to host the Olympics, and we do want to welcome the world to our state.
I actually thought of that before you mentioned it, but yeah, missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints go all over the world. These are a lot of people say they weren't members of the church that lived in, I don't know, French Lick, Indiana, maybe have never been outside of Indiana, or certainly never been outside of the United States. And yet, right now, I can sit here in this room and I go, you know what, I know people that speak French, Spanish, German, Russian, Mandarin, Chinese, Portuguese. Utah's very unique that way, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I'm a Utah girl through and through, born and raised here. And, when I talk to people about how incredible Utah is in being this global community already, people are like, how is that even possible? They just don't think of us that way. But then I point out that we have, we speak 130 different languages in our state. We have 5 national parks that bring in the world to see the beauty of what we have to offer. 1 in 5 jobs is related to international relations and foreign trade. And then the Olympics definitely is that global connection. People are amazed about, we're this hidden secret. And then you throw in the Utah way, the secret sauce, which is people in Utah generally care about each other. We want to take care of each other, and we're globally curious. And so it just really makes for a great place for people to come in and say, what are you doing right in our state?
You mentioned secret sauce. It made me think of fry sauce here in Utah. But Anyway,
we do get asked that question of what food should we try when we're here in Utah? And of course, it's always the funeral potatoes and the fry sauce.
Yeah, don't forget the green Jell-O too. But one of the things we've been buzzing about down here in southern Utah was the Professional Golf Association. We actually had Black Desert Championship. The PGA was right here in Washington County. It was actually in Ivins is where the course is. Professional golf is an international organization. There are players on the golf tour from all over the world, and of course they have their championship. They have the British Open, and they have a lot of international flavor to them. Do events like that also help your cause?
Yeah. So our name being Utah Global Diplomacy, people automatically think, oh, diplomacy, that's so regal. It's ambassadors around the country. It's formal negotiations. And while, that is traditional diplomacy, where we exist as a nonprofit is in the idea of citizen diplomacy. And that just means that you and I and everybody else are in this globally connected world. I mean, we can go on our phones, hop on any social media app, and talk to anybody from almost every country around the world. So we have that responsibility, and we have that right to help shape U.S. foreign relations, and it's done one handshake at a time. Now, the cool thing about that is that definitely has these tentacles that reach into every facet of our lives. So when you think about food, arts and culture, definitely sports diplomacy is a huge thing, and especially in our state. You talk to any athlete and they can tell you stories of, this time I met this person from this country, or this time I traveled to, this country to go participate in this activity. It's those simple little things that is diplomacy. And so we really remove the emphasis away from that government to government relations, and we put it into the people's hands by saying, let's all shape how we want people to look at each other and treat each other. And so, my favorite thing is definitely sports diplomacy. I love it. We've done symposium before about that topic. And in fact, just last October, we did a sports diplomacy symposium. We had the official U.S. diplomat skateboarder come and be our keynote speaker. So it really does span all different types of sports. So golf is certainly up there.
No, I didn't grow up in Utah. I grew up in Texas. We moved to Utah, though, in 1980. So except for my 2-year mission, I've been in Utah pretty much for the last 44 years. Man, that sounds like a long time and like I'm really old. But so tremendous pride in what Utah is. Talk about the perception worldwide that people might have of Utah and what you're doing to try to improve that.
Yeah, it really is that people around the world don't know about Utah. And so what our goal is, and it's sort of the beauty around the work that we do, because when people think about international relations, they think about American resources going out into the world. But what it is those resources actually stay here in our community, and we bring the world to Utah so that they can embed themselves into our way of life and see what it's all about. You know, just as I don't know about you, how extensively you've traveled, but whenever I go to a different country, I absolutely want to experience the place. I want to hear the music. I want to taste the food. I want to hear the language. I want to walk the streets and look at the buildings, right? It's the same idea here, that they're coming to Utah and learning about what it is that we do. Now, the really interesting thing is that we just simply, when we have them meet with these professionals, so let's take, for example, I've got a delegation here that are women leaders from Europe. And women, they're also business owners. And so we have them here in Utah meeting with other resources and women business owners. And the people that they're meeting with are simply sitting down to say, this is what I do in the state of Utah. Here is my case study. This is how I've been able to make it work. And this is where I'm growing. Then what happens is these delegates go back to their country and they can take all of the different ideas that they had and really work through them and say, this is what is going to work best for my community. But what we find is that they really see Utah as an innovative place. It's got a lot of ideas, a lot of entrepreneurship going on. And so they really start thinking about, how do I continue that relationship with Utah? And like I said earlier, you know, we've been able to assess that when they go back to their country, they tell at least 40 more people about their experience here. So all of a sudden, they're starting to understand who Utahns are. And the value with that is, again, they can find Utah on a map, but we're also, we're talking about stereotypes. We're addressing negative stereotypes and saying, well, what is it that you thought about Utah and America before you came? And is it any different? And we have really great quotes from people saying, I was scared to come to America, but it wasn't until I came to Utah that I actually feel like I understand who Americans really are. And to me, that is the best feedback that we can possibly get.
Have any of them ever asked you how many sister wives you have, or anything like any of the stereotypes you were mentioning?
Not sister wives, but they definitely are curious about polygamy and if we still practice it in our state.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, we're going to talk about a listening tour here in a second, but I did want to ask you a couple of things. Number one, what is the most common or most interesting misconception they have about Utah? Maybe we already mentioned it. And then number two, what are some countries that people that you've had diplomatic relations with that might surprise us, or maybe we never heard of, or maybe just didn't know much about, that you can actually shed a little light on for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the stereotype that we hear the most is it's not a direct stereotype. It's more of this generalization that says, you know, what I knew about America is from what I heard on the news or what I see in movies. And when I come to Utah, and I can only speak to Utah, we are part of this larger network of nonprofits. There's about 86 of us throughout the United States that do similar work. But when I come to Utah, it dispels everything that I've read in the news, that I've seen in the movies. It's, you know, and that we smile a lot at people, that we're very friendly to people. And, you know, I love that. I love that we're a welcoming community. You know, in terms of countries, so I've been doing this job for 8 years. And before this job, I was in refugee resettlement up here in Salt Lake. And, you know, what I can say is that every once in a while I pull out a map and I count the countries of people that I've met through my career. And I'm up to 173 different countries.
Wow.
And so that is just doing the job that I do here. And so it is, I don't know that any country has surprised me, but I do think that it is truly amazing that you can get a global experience without having to leave the state of Utah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, that's it. You recently embarked on a listening tour. Tell us about what that is and what you found out.
Yeah. So what we are seeing through the U.S. State Department are some really interesting programs where we need to do a better job moving outside of these urban areas. And so things like soil conservation, hunting and fishing programs, rural economic development. And so when we saw these different programs coming in through the State Department, my team and I sat down to say, okay, how are we moving our programs beyond the Wasatch Front? And, you know, while we have done programs around the state of Utah, and we've actually done quite a few programs down in St. George, we felt like we could do a much better job in bringing our programs to all corners of our state. But we wanted to get an understanding of what does international relations look like in the state of Utah. And so that's where we went on this listening tour, you know, and currently I'm in the middle of it. I've gone to Vernal, up to Logan, down to St. George. I've got meetings in Cedar City and Moab. But what we're sitting down with each of the communities and listening to are a couple of questions. One is, what makes your community amazing? What barriers are you seeing and how are you addressing those barriers? And then what does international relations mean and look like already in your community? Because we don't want to come in and force any ideas that we have. We want to make sure that the connections that we make are meaningful for both sides. And what is really surprising is that international relations does exist in all of our communities, which I think is a huge stereotype that we need to dispel right here in our own state. So an example is when I was out in Vernal, one gentleman who was in the meeting that I was at, he was a farmer, and he said, let me tell you about my morning. I raise cattle, and I have already had phone calls with people from New Zealand and Australia and Japan.
Wow.
And it's because what we're doing on our ranch is so specific and unique that all of these different farmers from around the world are curious about, how do I learn from your best practices? And so I think we as a state need to do a better job in having discussions about what does international relations look like, because it already exists, and just, getting used to that terminology instead of just thinking about, that only happens in urban areas. It really does happen in rural areas as well.
I would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't mention that also the Huntsman World Senior Games are down here in St. George. And
yes,
right now in this town, we have people from, I think we're at the moment, about 50 different countries, overall over 100 different countries represented there at the World Senior Games. Yeah,
right. And I think, going back to my last point, I think people from other parts of Utah don't think of St. George as being this global hub, but it certainly it is. It's the gateway to Zion. So it's got the senior games. You just did the golfing. Utah Tech, the Office of Global Engagement there in Shadman Bashir, is doing some really interesting things about bringing global students down to St. George. And then you look at economic development, there's some really interesting things that are already taking place. But again, I think when people think about global, they think in much bigger terms, when in reality, it's our neighbors and the people we go to church with and our coworkers. We all have these unique stories. How do we start pulling it together to create this really beautiful, comprehensive global picture?
I was lucky enough, Felecia, to go to Europe this past summer and spend some time in Switzerland, Germany, France, and the Netherlands. And one thing I found out is exactly what you were just saying is all these people have regular old lives. They're just trying to get by. They have tremendous pride in who they are and where they live. But they're not really a whole lot different than we are right here in Utah.
But yeah. We certainly find that what is important to us here in Utah, which is family, it's opportunities, it's recreation, it's education. People around the world, they absolutely value the same thing. And what we find is that even though we might disagree on big ticket items, when we sit down and just talk to each other and get to know each other, people really do find commonality. And I'll give you an example of that. One of the things that we do is when we have a delegation come in, we ask for volunteers in the community to host dinners for our delegates. So really simple. You just, it's like 2, maybe 3 or 4 of these global people. And you just open up your home. It's whatever you usually cook for dinner, and you just sit down and share a meal together. And it's one of the favorite things that I do with my organization. And I've got a daughter. She's 12 years old. And what I find is that we oftentimes will talk about our children. Because when these individuals are coming to Utah, they're actually in the United States for about a month, and so they're incredibly homesick. They miss their children, they miss their family, and so for them to just sit down and get to know my daughter, and the fun thing is we have a ton of musical instruments in my house, and so they'll play the piano and we'll break out in song. They get that little bit of home away from home. And we realize that we have so much in common because, we all just want a better future for our children.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right about that. I love that. It's a great story. Thank you, Felecia. I need to run. I've got a commercial break. But Felecia, was there anything you wanted to add besides your website?
I'm just really excited to start connecting more with the people of St. George. I think there's a lot of energy and synergy between what's already happening in your great part of the Utah state and with the programming that we do. So our hope is that we can get down there again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it. UtahGlobalDiplomacy.org is the website. She's Felecia Maxwell-Barrett. Thank you, Felecia. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Appreciate you.
Wake up with the news and information you can trust. This is the Andy Griffin Show on News Radio 890, 92.5 KDXU, Southern Utah's News Talk leader.
Welcome back to the Andy Griffin Show. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I really appreciate it. I really do. And I hope everybody that got tickets to go see some golf this last few days that they were able to have a nice time. Matt McCarty won the tournament. I don't know who he is, but I guess his very first tour victory. That's pretty cool. I had on Saturday I attended a funeral. It was a graveside service for a friend of mine's father. He lived in my neighborhood where I lived before and knew the guy. In fact, he had an amazing singing dog. I'm not kidding either. This dog didn't howl. It actually sang along to me. I mean, it didn't mouth the words, but it was pretty cool. Anyway, Jack Telford is his name. Not the dog, the guy. And he passed away. His wife passed away a few years ago, so he joined her in the afterlife. I think that's what needed to happen, and it's pretty cool. But served in the military during the course of his life. I think he was actually in the Korean War. and was a cook in the Korean War. In fact, he loves to tell a story about how he got married to his wife Peggy, and then immediately shipped out and didn't see her for, it was like a year. He was over there overseas. So he was married, and Peggy had to sit home and, just kind of wait for him. And then, I don't know, it was kind of a touching story. So singing. And I guess he was attracted to her because of her red high heels. I think Kelly Pickler has a song about red high heels. But anyway, they gave a full military salute to Jack before the funeral, and it was pretty cool. They had the American Legion. I don't know if he's the guy in charge or whatever, but he gave a little speech beforehand about those willing to sacrifice and give they committed, they swore an oath, dedicating, the willingness to give their life for their country. Then they had a 21-shot salute. There were 7 guns. They fired 3 shots as a salute to Jack and his service for our country. And then another really nice speech, and then they played taps on the bugle, which was very touching. In fact, my buddy Scott was like, yeah, I was okay until they played taps, and kind of broke me up a little bit. But great experience. One thing about it, though, that it bugged me a little bit, nothing to do with the funeral itself, but there were probably 45 people there, and they had only set up chairs for about a dozen. So there was very little seating, and amongst the people seated were 3 or 4 kids. And, if you looked at everybody that was standing, and it was warm. It was, 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, and sweat's dripping down our faces and everything. And I didn't see these kids offer to give any of these adults. And the majority of the people there were seniors. I didn't see any of them offering their seats to anybody. And it got me to thinking, and there may have been all kinds of extenuating circumstances. I don't pretend to understand, why the kids didn't do that, or why the parents didn't tell them to do that, or for that matter, maybe the kids were, needed the seat. I don't know, but it did get me to thinking about teaching manners to our children. And I don't know. There's some things that I just feel like maybe they're worth mentioning again. Just little things that we should teach, maybe if not our kids, and I hope we did teach our kids, but maybe our grandkids. Things like, I don't know, how about staying off the phone when you're having a conversation with someone? Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you're telling them something you feel is pretty important, maybe instructions on how to do something, or maybe directions on how to get somewhere, or maybe it's just a story that you're telling them about yourself, and they pop their phone out and they start scrolling through their phone, or they start answering a text, or you feel like garbage when that happens. They make you feel bad. And another one was, the giving up the seat. I hope we're teaching our kids, we taught our kids and our grandkids that if you see a person who needs a seat, they're elderly, or they're pregnant, or, maybe handicapped, but just offer your seat to them. They might say no. I think had one of the kids offered me a seat Saturday, I probably would have said, no, I'm good. But, at least offer. Just saying. One of them that this really gets my dad's goat. You ever done something for somebody, or no, they've done something for you, and you say thank you, and they go, no problem, man. Or, it's all good. Whatever, Don't worry about it. That's another, instead of thank you, they say, don't worry about it. My dad says, thank you is, there's really no substitute for the word thank you or gracias, right? You just say thank you. It's one of the things that used to drive me nuts is I like to compliment people. Like if I see a lady and she's got a nice dress on, I'll say, "Well, you look really pretty in that dress." Or if I see a guy with a cool mustache, "Oh, I like your mustache." Not most of the time, half the time they deflect the compliment. Oh, this old thing, or yeah, I inherited, and it's no big deal, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. When all they had to do was say, thank you. Transaction over, right? I complimented them. They said, thank you. Transaction over. And then I might say, you're welcome, but that's about it. So, a couple of others. Let's see. Using their indoor voices. Oh, my gosh. How many times have you seen kids yelling inside the house? Drives me nuts. Maybe I'm getting to be old. I don't know. Old curmudgeon. They have done a good job, I think, maybe since COVID-19, maybe before that even, of getting kids to cough into their sleeve or their shirt or their elbow or something like that. Although I saw a meme the other day that said, yeah, they taught me to sneeze into the crook of the elbow. They didn't tell me it had to be my own elbow. Anyway, being on time maybe is the last one I wanted to bring up in this segment, and then we're going to take a break. But, I had someone say, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. I don't subscribe to that theory of having to be early. But unless you have a pretty good reason why you're late, and I don't mean an excuse, right? If your excuse is, well, traffic was worse than I thought. Well, if you'd have left a few minutes earlier, traffic wouldn't have been that big a deal, right? So to me, being late is a sign of disrespect. And, there's a shirt going around. This was popularized because of the show Big Bang Theory. There's a shirt, a T-shirt message going around that said, "I'm sorry I'm late. I didn't want to come." That's really the message that you're sending if you show up late for something 9 times out of 10. I didn't want to be here. I'm late because I didn't want to come. And you don't think people notice. I promise you they notice. If you show up late because you didn't want to come, people notice. People are like, yeah, I know why I didn't show up on time. I didn't want to be here. And that's kind of hurtful. 9:45 on KDXU. We'll be right back. I want to talk about a couple of things in the news this morning, including some really, really, really dumb criminals when we come back.
All the latest news, weather, traffic, and sports, just like you like them. You're waking up with the Andy Griffin Show on News Radio 890, 92.5 KDXU, Southern Utah's news talk leader.
9:49 on KDXU. A couple of items of business I wanted to mention. First of all, this Wednesday, so day after tomorrow, we're having a customer appreciation sale. This is for anybody who advertises with KDXU or anybody at Town Square Media, any of the stations, or would like to advertise with Town Square Media. It's Town Square Media's annual Customer Appreciation Day sale. With radio and digital that can boost your business, we're offering a one-day only 50% off regular rate sale. That's this Wednesday. Act fast. Our customer appreciation sale is Wednesday only. Customer appreciation sale. And if you're a current customer, I think you can come by for a luncheon as well on Wednesday. Also coming up a week from Saturday, that's October the 26th, is the grand opening of the Signature Pickle Club out off of Washington Dam Road. It's an open house. There's going to be free food, free open play. I'm going to be there for at least the morning. I also have the Blues Festival that day out in Tuacahn. So, and then there's another, I think there's a Halloween party. My wife wanted to go. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on Saturday. But this is Saturday the 26th. The open house is 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. with free food the middle part of the day, noon to 3. They're having raffle. They're giving away memberships. They're giving away equipment like pickleball paddles, balls, et cetera, et cetera. It's October 26th, the grand opening of the Signature Pickle Club off Washington Dam Road. The address is technically 960 South, 1900 East in Washington City. Their website is signaturepickleclub.com. It's amazing. They're basically taking a warehouse space and they're turning it into this a really nice pickleball club. They're going to have a lounge. I believe they're going to have it be the KDXU lounge. So that's pretty cool. All right, a couple of things to do today that caught my eye. First of all, okay, everybody made a run on toilet paper when we had the dock workers strike. Well, as it turns out, toilet paper is actually an American product. Most of it, like 90% of the toilet paper we use is made in America, so they never even made it to the docks. So that would, people aren't. I don't know why you would make a run on toilet paper or whatever. But one thing you should be worried about, because of the recent hurricanes in the southeastern part of the United States, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, are IV fluids. Now, this isn't going to affect everyday people. Very few of us actually go get an IV every day. They have, IV companies, but mostly you get your IV if you're in the hospital. But hospitals are really hoarding their IVs. What they have, they're trying to keep them safe, not use extras if they don't have to, because, let's see, the first group of the IV makers was in the Florida area, Daytona Beach area. About 1/4 of the entire nation's group of IV fluids are made in this company out in Daytona Beach, Florida. Guess where the rest of them are made? Asheville, North Carolina. You know what happened there, right? I mean, that was a place that got flooded with Hurricane Helene. So, Mary Mayhew, who's a part of the hospital coalition, says hospitals are preserving every drop of IV fluid. Supplies are not at a crisis level yet, but with both Daytona Beach and Asheville, North Carolina plants shut down or at least limited in what they can do, we could have an IV crisis in our country. Something to keep in mind. All right, stupid criminals. I love stupid criminals. Well, I mean, not literally love stupid criminals. I love stories about stupid criminals. So these guys got pulled over, and this was up in Oregon, and they had failure to use a blinker, some stupid reason. And so the police officer that pulled them over said they were acting really fidgety and suspicious. So he went ahead and called a police dog in, a drug sniffing dog, and got the guys out of the car. They did a search of the car. As it turns out, they had weapons, stolen money, fake IDs, and in the trunk of the car was a bag with a sign on it. The sign on the bag said, this is true. There's a sign on the bag that said, quote, "Definitely not a bag full of drugs." Definitely not a bag full of drugs. So the police opened the bag, and it was a bag full of drugs. And it was a very normal looking bag. They may not have looked at it in the first place until they saw the sign. It said definitely not a bag of drugs. And stupid criminals. Over the weekend, the number one movie in the box office, this was surprising to me, was a horror flick called Terrifier 3. They call it ultra gory. It's rated R, ultra gory, about a killer clown. It earned $18.3 million at the box office over the weekend and was the number one selling movie in America over the weekend. Terrifier 3. I've never heard of it. It just got me thinking. I don't love terror movies. I don't love horror movies at all. I've seen a few in my life, but not. First of all, they're rated R, and I try not to go to R movies anyway because there's the ubiquitous sex scene. There's a lot of gore and guts and things like that, and so I try not to go to R movies anyway. And then you got a movie about a killer clown, and it's gory. He's slashing and killing people with a knife, and I'm just like, why would anybody waste their what? Am I missing something? I know that fear, being afraid in a movie is a thrill that some people enjoy. But I've never loved horror flicks, and this one sounds kind of gory and disgusting too. Years ago, I watched a movie called The Ring. Have you seen The Ring? And I don't remember the premise a ton. I know there's a videotape at a store. Of course, this is back when we rented videos, right? The videotape at a store, and when you play it, the creature inside it made a ring on the screen, And when you play, the creature inside you were cursed, and the creature inside would actually crawl out of the TV and come after you. And it was, and I say creature, it was a woman-ish apparition thing that. And there's something with the well. The tape got thrown down a well, and I don't even remember the whole story. I just remember thinking I don't like whatever feeling that movie was giving me. I didn't like it. I didn't want to repeat it. Yeah, I watched another movie, a Stephen King movie at home, and I can't remember. It was a year. It was like 1923 or something. I don't. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about, but same kind of deal. I didn't like the feeling it gave me. And in fact, that movie, late at night when it's dark and you're alone and whatever, you start imagining things. And that movie actually, maybe for my psyche, that added some pretty scary scenes that I recollect in my mind occasionally when it's dark and I'm alone. All right, one last story. We got 2 minutes. A controversial annual bear hunt starts in northern New Jersey today. Department of Environmental Protection officials say the bear population has risen significantly over the recent years. Bear reports and incidents are up as well. State officials say the purpose of the hunt is to help reduce the population and therefore reduce bear-human encounters. Animal rights activists argue there are other non-lethal methods to achieve that goal. The hunt takes place this week in parts or all of 8 counties in northern New Jersey. And there's another hunt in December. Are you like me going, wait, what? Bears isn't New Jersey pretty populated, pretty full of people, and there's like no empty spaces there? I guess there must be a couple of, I don't know. I was in New Jersey for a while. My wife is from New Jersey. I didn't see any forests or empty, the whole time. I was in South Jersey, but I hear North Jersey is a lot like New York City. There's just people everywhere. There are bears in New Jersey. Really? I did not know that. That's a strange fact. If you were to tell me a few hours ago that they were instituting a bear hunt in New Jersey of all places because they are overpopulated with bears and they need to cut down the number of bears in the state of New Jersey, I would have called you crazy. I'd have said, there's no way. There's no bears in New Jersey. There's no open spaces in New Jersey. An open space in New Jersey would be a park, like, with the slides and the playground. I don't remember seeing any open spaces in New Jersey where bears could possibly live, but I guess it happens. You learn something every day. There's no punchline here. I just didn't think there'd ever be, I didn't think there were any bears in New Jersey. Who knew? Back tomorrow, Washington County Commission on the air here on the Andy Griffin Show.